Beseder, we are starting a new book. Yay. We're literally starting a new story. Okay, and I know that you started to discuss with Rabbi Shem Tov on Sunday, and I hope you've had a chance to start to look at the Torah portion yourself. Have you? Yes, yes, no, no? Okay, we got some yeses, we got some no's, it's all good. Okay, so we're learning the first parsha. The new book is the book of Devarim, which means things or words, right? Sayings, words, okay? So within the book of words, we're also in the parsha. This specific parsha is also called Devarim. So you could argue that that the name of the parsha or the name of the whole book is coming from the first word of the first parsha, but there's more to that. I feel like you covered that with Rabbi Shem Tov, so I don't want to go into that so much. I want to sort of dive into some other pieces of this because it's shocking but true. We're going to run out of time. Okay, so we'll get to it after. Okay, let's do an order. What's happening in the book of Devarim in total? Anybody know?
We're ready to come in, and then we're coming in.
What?
We're ready to come in.
We're ready to come in. We're ready to come in. Okay, what's Devarim? Devarim is exactly Moses is, how do you say belonging to Moses. Moses is swan song to the Jewish people. Moses. His as Meir said, it's his final podcast to the Jewish people. What?
Final episode of the season.
What?
Final episode of the season.
Final episode of the season. You have to speak clearly. I don't hear you.
I have an apple mouth.
That's not my problem. Okay, yes, it is the final episode of the season, and Moshe he's going to literally talk to the people for 37 days. Okay? The Torah is going to tell us when he starts. It tells us when he starts. If you take a look in chapter 1, verse 2, okay? In 3, okay? It was Ba'arba'im Shana, it was in the 40th year, Ba'ashtei Asar Chodesh, in the 11th month. Anybody know what is the 11th month on the Jewish calendar? Let's do the easier question. When is the first? Nisan is the first. So if Nisan is the first, then what's the month right before Nisan? Adar, right? We have Purim right before Pesach, which is totally diabolical to have a holiday where we get a ton of candy a month before we have to get rid of all the chametz in our house. It's kind of not so fair. And a month before, so that's 12. So Adar is 12. And Shvat is the 11th month.
So Elul is 10?
6th.
Come on, Elul.
Tishrei is 7. Elul is 6. Nisan is 1. Okay, so we are in the 11th month, which, as Meir said, is the month of Shvat. And one of the things, and so we're in the 40th year, so it's 2488 of a biblical calendar. It's the first day of the 11th month, so it's the first day of the month of what we know as Shvat. Moshe is going to pass away on the 7th of Adar of the same year, which is in the longest frame. This is going to be 37 days later. So there's going to be like one hectic series of Farbrengens going on, where Moshe is going to go over some of the stuff that happened to the people and sort of give them everything that he can give them to make sure that their time in the land of Israel is going to be a success. Okay? Maybe kind of tangential to this, but I'll share it anyway. Right? Moshe knows that he has a very short amount of time to live. Right? He has 37 days. He knows that in about 5 or 6 weeks, it's actually going to take a little longer because there's going to be a mourning period for him. The Jews are going to cross over into the land of Israel, and he's not going with them. What would you say? Like, what do you say at that time? You know, what do you say in that time where you know, like, here he for sure knows he's not going to see them again. But even in our own lives, you know, there are times where you have this moment of like, okay, I'm not saying we live like this on a regular basis, but like, what would be my final charge if I had to? So in our family, we have my husband's father was 16 years old in 1944. And they were from Hungary, and the Hungarian Jews thought everything was fine for them because the war was going so poorly for Germany. For sure, they're not going to bother with the few 100,000 Jews in Hungary, like they have other things to do. And lo and behold, that was not in fact the case. And the night before the roundup, his father, meaning my husband's grandfather, had procured papers for his son. He realized that they weren't going to be able to get the whole family out. They were older grandparents and whatever. And then he just put it on the side. He's like, we're never gonna need this. And the night before the roundup, his father called him, gave him the papers, told him to hide. And he said to him, go in peace, and you should be a religious Jew. And then he never saw his family again. He had two sisters that survived the war. One died right after in Sweden. She's buried in Malmo. And the other one, actually, they ended up living in Australia, and they built a new life there. So here we have Moshe. What's he going to tell them? What can you possibly tell the people that's going to inspire them, that's going to help them, that's going to push them forward? So our parsha pretty much starts with Moshe going over the history a little bit and gently pointing out where they could have done things better. Now remember, he's not talking to the people who did these sins. That's not what he's going to do. But the whole book, in this whole 37 days, the overall message of Devarim is, what can I give you to survive in this next chapter of your life? What can I give you so that you don't forget, you don't become complacent in your abundance? And what can I give you so that you remember that there's a God who is involved in your life? So if we're going to talk about what's going to be our last Torah portion that we're learning together, Devarim is a pretty good one. Like, we're moving on to the next stage. We're moving on to another place. And what do we do? So we say that we remember, and that we our time in Israel and our learning and our relationship with Hashem, how do we practically put it all together? So we're going to get into the parsha, but I want to say a couple of things. So first of all, we're going to find something very interesting about this book in general, as opposed to the other 4 books of the Torah. And this book is written in first person language. So Moshe will say, God said to me, and I said to him, and we said. Okay? We don't have that. In all the first 4 books, we have what's called third person present. Don't ask me about the grammar term, I don't know. But like a story is being narrated. There's an anonymous narrator who's telling the story. They were here, and Moses did this, and God said this, and blah, blah, blah. That's the first 4 books. That's why if you look into places of biblical criticism, they're like, oh, these are multiple authors, and this was written by somebody else. Our sages have a different take on it. And they talk about the idea, and that Moses, they say that Moses said this book on his own, but they also say, Shechina midaberet mitoch grono shel Moshe, that God was speaking through his throat, meaning whatever Moshe was saying was Hashem's words, but they had such a tight connection that he knew what the words were going to look like, and he knew what they were going to sound like. Has anybody ever been around an old couple? Couple that's married for maybe not an old couple, a couple that's married for a very long time, right? One starts the story, the other one finishes it. They know what's going on. They know what bothers each other. They know what the other one likes. They're like, oh, we're going to a restaurant. I'll order because I know this is what you always get, right? In a way, that's where Moshe is in this relationship with Hashem. He knows what Hashem's going to say. He knows what the words are going to look like, and he's putting it into words that are his words, but they're also Hashem's words, okay? And one of the things that the sages talk about is that this book number 5, is really the bridge between the written Torah and the oral tradition. Meaning, where do we come to this place that we are in fact able to learn Torah in our own, how do we make it our own? If it's only if everything is this is what it is. And as Hashem says, like, I'm going to go argue with God. I mean, we argue with God on a regular basis, but like, who am I to argue with God kind of thing? But when Moshe puts Torah into his own words, now, Moshe has a very different relationship with God than I do. We're going to all agree on that. But the place that he's able to make Torah his own is that bridge. To say, it's not just enough to have it exactly like this, but how do we learn it? How do we take it in? One of the other things that's very interesting that Rashi talks about, it says that the Moshe, let's find the, it says in verse 5, Hoel Moshe Bir Satorah Hazos. Moshe starts to explain all the Torah. And Rashi says that what does it mean, Bir Satorah, that he explains the Torah? He says that he explained it in 70 languages. He explained it in 70 languages. Now, the people that he's speaking to, I would say they speak one. Maybe they're
70 faces.
Right, but but let's say they're Europeans and they speak 3 languages or 5 languages, right? But they all spoke Hebrew. They why did he need to do it? And the commentators talk about the idea that Torah what's another thing about language, the difference of language, is that it has different intonations and different reflections and it reflects a different culture. And one of the things that Moshe is laying the groundwork for is that Torah has to speak to us where we are in our life now, not just if we were those kind of people who could understand it this way, Torah has something to say to us. But explaining the Torah into 70 languages, and as Maya said, 70 we know, 70 facets to Torah. So yes, it's the different languages, it's also the different facets of Torah, but really what Moshe is saying is you need to own this. This has to be relevant in your life. What is, anybody involved in marketing, different communities, different ways. We market it differently to different people. We're not changing the product, but we have to say that the language has to reflect the people that we're speaking to. And let's start with ourselves. When we learn Torah, can we then put what we've learned into our lives, into our experience, into our words? Or we can just parrot back an example that we heard, and I don't mean parrot in a bad way. I'm saying, like, can we not take it out of the context that we heard it from the first time? Is there a way that I can extrapolate that and make it real and personal to me? Because if I can't, I'm missing a step. I'm not owning Torah. I am a receiver for Torah, and that's fine, and that's great, and that's amazing, but is it mine? Is it going into my kishkis? Is it going into my bloodstream and enervating me? That's only going to happen if it's really mine. And one of the neat tricks is, I learned something. Can I tell it over to somebody else? Can I use my own examples? Can I use my own words? Or can I repeat exactly like the teacher taught, which is a great thing, and don't get me wrong, but can I own it? Can I say, oh, this makes sense. I could see how we were talking about it yesterday with Muktzah. How do we make this ours and own it in a way, in a language, in a personality that reflects us? Then we're really owning Torah. And that's where the bridge is. Hearing it from Hashem and finding I'm going to say this, and I was going to say the thing that fell into my head was to find a clean channel. Okay, and what I mean by that is very often we look at things through our personal lens, and it has all our biases and all our, neuroses and our hang-ups, whatever. So when I say, can we look at Torah sort of pushing those veils of not owning it, but sort of saying, can I look at if I didn't have that, sort of, I don't know if that makes sense in English, but it makes sense in my head, whatever. And then how do we own it and how do we make it our own? And really this is a transitional book that's going to help us say, how do we own Torah? So yes, 70 languages, yes, 70 facets, yes, in my life and in my personality. And remember, there was a very, very big fight amongst all the sages. First of all, for writing down Torah, and then for translating Torah. One of the things that we mourn in our fast days is the day that the Torah was translated into Greek. And we're like, why is that a bad thing? Translating the Torah into Greek sounds amazing. We're not mourning the fact that Torah was translated into English and Spanish and French and German and Chinese, I don't know, right? We don't mourn that. And the question that the sages grapple with is, what's the point of what we're doing? Are we translating Torah into Greek because the people know Torah, but they don't know Greek? Or am I translating Torah into English because the people know English, but they don't know Torah? Got that? Mm-hmm. So when we're translating Torah into Greek because they know Torah, but they don't know that language and that culture, so I'm going to use the language that they know to teach them a foreign culture, that's not something that we're celebrating. But if they have this, they have the foreign language, but they don't have Torah, then it's a bridge into Torah. Then the translation is a bridge into Torah, not a bridge from Torah into Greek life or whatever. Did that make any sense? It makes sense in my head. Okay. So Moshe translates the Torah. And one of the things that we're going to find in this parsha specifically, because the whole book is not going to be, Moshe telling off the people, but there's going to be a lot of stuff that he's going to sort of remind them. One of the interesting things that he talks about multiple times in the course of the book is he talks about the place, and it's not in our parsha, so spoiler. What happens when things are good for us? How do we hold a relationship with God when things are good for us? When we are successful, and we are wealthy, and we are well-fed, and we are taken care of, can we still acknowledge that God is in our lives? Because when things are going, in the other direction, we all remember God. But can we remember God in our places of success? And he says that is that is a Jewish fatal flaw. That once things get good, we're like, I got this one, God, I'm good, you can leave me alone, right? Moshe's like, no, don't do that. You're going to go into the land of Israel. And what's the point of going into the land of Israel as opposed to being in the desert? You've been in at least one Hasidus class. What is the point of everything? Making a home for God. We're settling the land of Israel. We're making a home for God. The desert is a place that nothing grows and you can't do anything. And if that's a different space. We're not trying to okay, in Israel we've transformed the desert and it blooms and that's all very nice. But if in Hasidic terminology we talk about the desert, we talk about something that nothing grows and nothing blooms and it's just empty wasteland, as opposed to in the country, in the city, that's where we're making a home for Hashem. So he says there is another challenge that we're facing as we go into that Avodah. We're going to that place of making a home for Hashem. Don't get too complacent. Don't forget that that's the point of what's going on, and stay and to really to not forget about Hashem when things are good. That's not in this parsha, but I had to throw that in there. What does he talk about? What he does in this parsha is he tells us stories that we already know from another angle. Okay, so the first thing he's going to talk about after his introduction, which I think he did with Rabbi Shem Tov, about all the locations that are just hinted at, and so we're not going to go there. So the first thing that he talks about is in chapter 1, verse 9, that they're going, and he talks about how the people are so many and he can't carry them by himself, and he needs to set up another system of judges and officers and leaders. Okay, now if anybody remembers Yitro, exactly. Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, was the one who came up with this idea to say, he came and he saw them and he said, it's too hard and it's too much. We're so familiar with like a staggered court system. You have the state law, you have federal, you have the Supreme Court. Like, we understand that jurisdictions, like this court should be in charge of here, and then if you have a bigger problem, go bigger and bigger and bigger, right? What was happening when Yitro comes to the desert, he sees Moshe judging everybody. He's like, it's not tenable. It's not sustainable. So Yitro comes up with this thing of having the staggered court system. Have, officers over this many people. Okay. When Moshe tells the story here, first of all, Yitro is not mentioned at all. Which is like, that's very interesting. Why is Yitro not mentioned over here? And also what happens is that he sort of changes the language of what they're looking for. So where Yitro was saying, let's set up judges, like it's just like a very practical situation. We need more judges. Moshe is actually looking for leaders. He's not only looking for people who know the law, but for people who can guide who can guide the nation. So, and there he's talking about and Moshe. So, in a way, Yitro gives the first kernel of this idea of like some kind of, I don't want to say staggered system, but some kind of system where it's not one person who has to do everything. And Moshe takes that system and expands on it, but changes it. Because Yitro just wants somebody like, you're right, you're wrong. What happened between you guys? You know, like the teacher comes in, two people are fighting, you go to that corner, you go to that corner, and we'll sort it out afterwards. That's in a way what Yitro is looking for. Who could judge? Who's right, who's wrong? Moshe's like, no, that's not what the people need. They need leadership. They need to be empowered to be good people. They need to be empowered to be holy people. Not just, are you right or are you wrong? And so if you see, and we're not going to go into the whole language of it, of what Yitro suggests as the qualities for these judges and what Moshe's looking for. And so that's the first thing it's just like, it's a small thing, but I think it's very interesting. And also what's interesting is Moshe's repeating all of this to the people who are going into the land of Israel. That means when they set up their court system, because that's one of the mitzvahs, they have to have a court system, he's telling them, you're not only looking for judges, you're looking for leaders. It's not enough to say, do I know this subject well, but am I also a good person in my own personal life? And sort of that's sort of what Moshe's charging them as they're going in. But he's not just telling them a story of once upon a time. He's telling them it's guidance for the future of what they should look for, in a judge. The next story that he's going to give us another version of is in the third Aliyah, which is the first chapter, verse 22. And he's going to tell us the story of the spies. Now, if anybody remembers the story of the spies, how does the Torah portion open up on the story of the How does the Torah open up with the story of the spies? It says, Hashem said, choose people and go send spies to check out the land, right? And we know that story did not end well. Okay, that story did not end well. Well, yes and no, meaning what happens is that when the spies come back and they say, we can't do this, and everybody like goes into absolute hysterical panic, Hashem says, now you're crying for nothing, I'm going to give you a reason to cry, and that, right? Our parents, every parent has said that, I think. I'll give you a reason to cry.
You want to cry?
Exactly. You cry for it? Exactly, right? Familiar thing. We didn't like it then. We don't like it when God does it to us either. And so that the night that the spies come back is actually the night of Tisha B'Av. So Hashem's like, I'll give you a reason to cry. So exactly, mic drop, right? We're gonna make you cry. But what's interesting is that in the first telling of the story in Parshas Shlach, the majority of the blame is put on the people who went out. The spies. The blame is given on the spies. We have,
Well, they're the ones that like freaked everyone out. No?
Right. So in that story, we have the names of the people who went out. We hear their graphic detail of their punishment. That's not what Moshe's telling us over here. In this story, Moshe's not telling us. That story is like Hashem said to go send spies. These are the people who went. What's it? So there he says, it says Hashem said to send the spies. These are the people who went. This is how they messed up. This is how they got punished, and this is how the people got punished. That's the Cliff Notes version of the story, right? In this parsha, if you take a look inside, Moshe opens up. Who's going to read for us? You can read in English. Chapter 1, verse 22. Do somebody who has the words.
Okay. So, all of you that approached me and said, let us send men ahead of us, and they shall spy out the land for us and report back to us what language they speak, the way through which we shall go up, and the cities that we shall enter first. And
as you said, continue to the next pasuk.
I approved and took from you 12 men, one man for each tribe. They turned,
and then that's where the story is going to go. And it's going to go in that they came back, and the people came back, and they said they brought back the fruit, and they came back, and they said in verse 25. The people come back and they say, Tova ha'aretz asher Hashem Elokeinu nosein lanu. The land is very good. V'lo avisam lahalos, but you guys did not want to go. So in Moshe's telling of the story, we have the people being the initiators of this plan to send the spies, and the people not wanting to move out of this space. Okay? And when we learn Torah, we actually have to put the pieces together. So we do have this situation where the people said, we need to go, if you want us to go to the land of Israel, then, we're not living in the desert. We're not living in a land that has manna and clouds and all this miraculous stuff. We have to go live a regular life. So regular life, we need to send spies and we need to and Moshe really here is showing, so then the first time it's told that Hashem said, but it's a two-part story where they came in and said, we should do this. And then Moshe's like, oh, that's a good idea. So then really, that's sort of the order of how it went. And then Hashem said, go send the spies. So we have this tag team thing happening. There's a lot of conversation about the spies specifically. What I think is important for us in our space here is the headspace of how we report what we've seen. Right? We're in a like maybe I shouldn't say this, right? But we're in a space where we're not staying here for very long. We have to go back to wherever we have to go back to. How do we tell the story of what we've seen and what we've experienced? Because one of the things that Moshe is doing here in this book is he's reframing a lot of behavior and saying, this was a little bit, this needed a little bit, this one. When we look at our lives, we look at our experience and we say, how did that work for me? The big problem with the spies was, in a way, Chassidus talks about the spies, and their big issue was that they didn't want to live a normal life. They didn't want to live a life where you're a doctor, lawyer, news reporter, fire person, whatever, and also have a relationship with God and do mitzvahs and keep Shabbos. They want to sit in the desert. They're like, we can't do that. We can't do that type of life, right? We can only keep Shabbos if we're in the desert. If we're in this little bubble where everything is protected and taken care of, that's how we can do it. And what Hashem actually says to the spies, not to the spies actually, what he says to the people is, Sababa, you don't want to go, you won't go. You don't want to go into the land of Israel, stay and die in the desert, right? You'll have your time, you'll have your protected Jewish experience. You won't go to the land of Israel. But the people that Moshe is talking to are the children. They're not the ones who said, we don't want to go in. These are the people who are in fact, yes, going in. They're the people who are in fact, yes, choosing to go into the land of Israel. And still Moshe is saying, he's reminding them of the problem that their parents had, their fathers specifically, not their mothers, obviously. But there's a commentator that says, I think it's a Kliyakar, who says that the problem with sending the spies was that Moshe sent men, not women. Because women have a proven track record of loving God and the land of Israel. If we would have sent women, nothing would have happened. It would have all been fine. Just saying, just putting that out there. So Moshe's talking to the people, and he's reminding them of a fatal flaw of their parents, not of theirs. But he's still saying, how do you remember that this is going to be a challenge? It's going to be a challenge to go into the land, and what you're expected to do when you go into the land is not to be so subsumed by everything that's going on. One of the phrases that the spies use is Eretz Ochelet Yoshvehi. It's a land that eats its inhabitants. And they one of the things that Chassidus explains is people were so busy with their material lives, they have no time for Torah. And the Talmud it talks about I think maybe Rabbi Akiva, I could be wrong, that he was looking at how we live life, and he said, if I plow when I'm supposed to plow, and I plant when I'm supposed to plant, and I harvest when I'm supposed to plant, Torah matehei aleh, what will happen with Torah? When do you have time to engage in Torah if you're so busy with the material? So Moshe's telling the people, you are in fact going in. Kol hakavod, sababa, nachon, l'chaim. We're adding l'chaim to your routine, right? You're going in. You're not saying we don't want to go in, but remember that the point is to go in and to stay connected to Hashem. Not to not go in, but also not to go in and get sunk in our lives. And it's something that, of all the things that we need to imagine. I can't even picture what that looks like. Being subsumed by physical is just one of those things that's so easy for us to understand. It's not something we have to worry about, like, here in Israel we had less, we had this and whatever, and it worked out. We don't have to even work to imagine what is life like with Trader Joe's and Target and all right? We don't have to think about what it's like, but remember, and this is the thing that we have to remember, that it's so easy to get stuck into those places.
That's true.
Spend
hours.
It's so easy to get stuck into those places, and we have to remember that that's not what the point is.
Bella, come to Target. Bella, come to Trader Joe's. Oh my God.
Okay.
You're missing out. We'll take you to both.
So what do we have to know as we're going forward? We have to remember that we're going in, we have a mission, and we're not going to get stuck and misguided and they tell a story of I find godliness in the laundry, so yeah. It's endless, just like he is. Infinite, just like he is. But right. So they give a parable, and in I don't remember if it's from Hasidus or other, and they talk about a king who's opening his palace to everybody, and whoever wants can come and talk to the king and do whatever they want, right? So, but what the king does is that he sets up the king is in the inner chamber. So the outside chamber has music, and the next one has good food, and the next one has beautiful paintings, and the next one has whatever. And all the people along the way got stuck at different places, and they forgot. Let's say they had 5 hours to come to the king, and so they come in, and the first people, they get stuck by the music, and they get stuck by the food, and they get stuck by the paintings, and the one person who just goes, zoom, beeline straight in gets to hang out with the king and talk to him for the 5 hours because he put on his blinders, put in his earplugs, or didn't even was not sophisticated enough to appreciate any of the things that were being offered. So he's like, this is where I'm going. I'm going to see the king. I'm not getting distracted. And it's so easy for us. God is waiting for us in every single encounter. Yes, he's waiting for us in Trader Joe's, and he's waiting for us in Costco. Maybe not in Target, I don't know. But he's there, right? But are we going to get distracted? Are we going to get distracted by everything along the way and say, oops, we forgot that we're here for mission?
What is an example of when you are distracted?
Well, first of all, can I tell myself, oh, this isn't what I want to be doing? And the bigger question that I would say is, what do we do beforehand to not get distracted? Or to say, I'm a very big believer, we're talking about this, I'm a very big believer in timers, right? Said, I want to scroll on my phone now. How much time am I willing to give to scrolling on my phone? No, 6 days is not the right answer. Okay? How much? Set a timer. When that timer goes off, that reminds you, oh my goodness, so much time has passed. How much time do I want to give myself to be in Trader Joe's or in Target? Again, 5 days is not the right answer, right? But we're
A couple hours though.
It always takes a couple of hours and $500.
Yeah, the way I leave Target was one thing I only.
But the question is, do you remember to get the one thing that you went for? Yes. Yeah. But my point is, let's say, here's a challenge. The next time you go into Trader Joe's or Target or Costco or wherever the stores you go to, how much time am I, before you walk into the store, how much time am I willing to give myself here? Because it will suck up all my time. But can I set myself a timer for, what's the normal amount of time? 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if your timer is for 5 hours. But if you have a timer, that goes off, that reminds you, time is passing. Meaning this is, if I stay here longer, my other commitments fall by the side.
Leaving the Lotus Hotel or whatever.
Yes, casino, exactly. Yeah, casino. Yes. But if there were no, hello, by the way, every single casino in the world has no clocks.
That's crazy.
They have no clocks. They have no windows. Right? They don't want you to. They don't want you to. They don't want you to be aware of passing time. They don't want you. They don't want you to be aware of passing time. So I'm just saying. There are certain things that we stick with me, people. there are certain things that we need to have, and there are certain things that we need to do. And if we don't pay attention, it will be exactly the Lotus Hotel or whatever from Harry Potter, from Percy Jackson, and we're gone for 10 years and we have no idea, right?
Is that why they only have like the mediocre super farms here? Because He knows you're only going to spend like 5 minutes there.
Because they're overpriced anyway. They're overpriced. It's like, how much can I rip you off? You're going someplace. You need.
Overpriced?
Yeah, whatever. Doesn't matter. I'm making a plug. Use your timer. How much time am I willing to give any of this behavior? How much time do I want to give this? Because we so easily lose track of time. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh my gosh, I had so many good plans for today. And none of those happened because I was scrolling on Instagram for not a half an hour, but for 7 hours. Right? And when you come off, you feel gross.
So angry.
Right? You're angry at yourself, right? Set a timer. By the way, I want to say something. Just because your timer goes off doesn't mean your time is over. You can choose. You can reevaluate. Exactly. You can reevaluate and say, do I need more time? Am I willing to give myself more time? Reset the timer. Okay? Don't say, I'm only going to take another 5 minutes, because if you didn't set another timer, you don't know when 5 minutes passed. It's a true life experience. Right? You have no idea of how much time has passed. So we're going back wherever we're going, whether the next stage of our life is still in Mayanot, if we're going to the army, if we're going back to university, if we're going to the next stage of our learning, doesn't matter. We're there for a reason. We're going there to be the female spies to make a home for God. We are not going to get distracted. We are not going to get, forget what we're there for. We're not going to be so out to lunch that we're not going to be able to do what it is that we want to do. So yes, we have to learn, and yes, we have to have our job, and yes, we have to all those things. Yes, but that's not what our main job is. Our main job is to make a home for God wherever it is that we are. So if we remind ourselves, so what happens when we get off track? We have to find a way to redirect ourselves. We go back to our favorite podcast, our Jewish listening stuff, our Mayanot. We have a lot of stuff on Spotify, people. A lot of classes are on Spotify. Right? We also have more classes on SoundCloud, by the way, because Spotify, I'm just saying.
Plugging the SoundCloud is crazy.
Because nobody uses SoundCloud anymore. Yes. But Spotify. Right, but I'm saying because Spotify only holds like the last X amount of classes. But if you want classes that are 5 years old, those are on SoundCloud. That's what I'm saying.
But one thing I think that's really cool is that I found, like, personally, that if I don't redirect myself, God ends up redirecting me in the way that I'm supposed to, like, ultimately do. I think that's, like, really.
But it's
if you're open,
but it's like more painful. You don't realize
that's
the path.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's like crazy.
It's like the hard way or the easy way.
Right.
Short, long way, long.
Short, long way, long story. Okay, so then here's the question: can I try to stay on track and still see God directing me?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If you're saying when I forget, what?
What if you think you're on track, but you're actually on the wrong track?
That is
tell you.
no. I want to say something. That is why you need to surround yourself with good people. You need to surround yourself with people who say, "Girl, you have sauce on your face." Right? Because our self-love, which is very interesting because we're a generation that has both low self-esteem and incredible self-love, and they somehow get tangled up in some weird ways. But there's a place of our self-love that trips us up and say, no, it's not so bad. We're fine. We weren't so mean to that person. We didn't really insult that person. We didn't really, right? But then when it gets done to us, we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it, right? So when you surround yourself with people who are able to tell you, not every single person, okay, it's not every single person, but you need to have somebody in your life who you check in with, who you talk to, who you speak to, and you say, this is what I'm up to, this is what I'm doing. And they're the ones who say, like, they'll help you say, can you be doing more? Or conversely, and this is the more important thing, are you going too fast? Are you moving too quickly? Like, those are both super important things to be hearing. Can you do more? Right? When we say, oh, we're like, my kids say, oh, I don't have any, I can't do this, whatever. I'm like, you can't or you don't want. It's fine to say I don't want, but don't tell me I can't when I really could, right? And, I can't find time to say a few Jewish words, learn a Jewish thing. Yeah, because if you picked up your phone first thing in the morning, you ran out of time to do anything else that you really wanted to do, right? But it's okay. I think that we have 2 tension poles that are going with us. The one is I want to do more, and the other is
I don't want to burn out.
yeah, exactly. And I need to make sure that I'm balanced in a way that I'm not moving too quickly. And somebody who knows you well will say,
inevitable?
no, not at all. It's inevitable to burn out if you aren't paying attention. Because it's such a good thing. It's a mitzvah. It's a good thing. I should do this. I should.
It's inevitable for us to fall into going too quickly and then having to pull back.
One of the things I say to people when they're not sure if they want to come to Mayanot for a longer, I said, come for a short amount of time. Come for a short amount of time, see how this works. Because it's easier to add than to say, oh, I signed up for too long and I want to pull back. Right? That's it. I did. Right? That it's easier to have a success and build on a success. When we say we move too fast and therefore, I have to take it away, it doesn't do good for us, even though we know it's the right thing to do. It's a much harder place to be. I would argue a gazillion times, move slower and then add. Even if you think, do anybody do public speaking? Right? And they tell you slow down when you talk? And you're like, I sound like an idiot. No, people can't hear you when you're talking your normal speed. If you're giving a speech, you need to slow down to a pace that you think sounds crazy, because that's how people can hear you. And they get all the words that you say. Right? And the same thing is true of our mitzvahs and the things that we're doing. We're not saying it's not a good thing to do. And I say this to my kids all the time. I'm not saying never. I tell my kids, never say never. Never is a very long time. Never is a very long time. But right now, this doesn't work for me. It doesn't mean that this is a bad thing. It's a good thing, but for right now, that's not where I am. Okay, so then where am I right now? And how am I stepping to that space? Because I'd rather go slow and in my head sound like I'm moving too slowly, but it's going to be sustainable. I don't think it's inevitable that you go too fast and have to pull back. I think that's a poor planning situation, And just like you wouldn't start an exercise regime with the advanced levels if you haven't been exercising for the last 15 years. It's just going to hurt you. Like the same is true of our spiritual exercise. We need to move at a pace that we build up the muscles that we need to make us strong. And it's not saying that isn't good. It's just saying that's not where I am right now. And it's so important to be able, especially because it's all around us, and it's a good thing. Here's a mitzvah, here's a mitzvah, here's a mitzvah, and it's all good stuff. Okay, maybe not all this good stuff, but by and large, it's good stuff like that gentle peer pressure to do more. Whoa, take a deep breath. Take some time with yourself, without your headphones. Go out into the nature. I don't know if you're in a country that has any clear air or whatever. Go breathe a little bit and think and say, what am I doing? How am I doing? Where was I a year ago? Where was I 5 years ago? Where do I want to be in a year and in 5 years? Like, if we don't take stock of ourselves, we're going to burn out. We're going to burn out. But if we stay in touch with ourselves and, like I said, have somebody who says, you could do a little bit more, or you're going too fast. Like really, it's not inevitable unless we're just like not paying attention. And then, okay, you went out without sunscreen and you got to burn. Ain't not also. No, we're not pointing fingers anyplace. Okay, we have a lot more in this parsha that we didn't end up doing. We talk about he jumps to the war with Sichon and Og, division of the land, the tribes who stay on the other side of the Jordan. Shocking but true, we're not going to have time to get into that right now. I want to say 3 other things. First of all, this week in Shul, we're all going to be there. Sasha's getting
If anyone wakes up, you're in charge of waking up.
Okay, so that's one thing. This week, the Haftorah for this week's Torah portion is, we spoke about it briefly, is Chazon Yeshayahu. It's the vision of Ezekiel, and Reb Levi Yitzchak of Barditchev says that there's a vision that Hashem shows us on this Shabbos. It's called Shabbos Chazon, the Shabbos of vision. And there's a vision that our neshama sees that we do not see. We were talking about this, right? So this is it. We're up at this Shabbos. This Shabbos is Shabbat Chazon. It's the Shabbos of vision. Huh? If you see it, then I have good medication for you. It's something that your neshama should see it. Your neshama should see it. Your neshama should see it. Over the course of the Shabbos. I don't know. Maybe we'll see it when Sasha gets her name. I have no idea.
Is it like the Shabbat before Tisha B'Av?
Yes. This is the Haftorah for the Shabbat. This is the Haftorah for the Shabbat before Tisha B'Av, which is still scheduled to be Monday night and Tuesday. I'm very much hoping that it will be canceled because Mashiach will come and then we won't fast. So I'm still ready for that. In which case we're going to have a massive, massive party in Farbrengen and bring it on. We're ready, huh? Right? We're going to be. But what's say? But the Haftorah. Yeah. But the Haftorah. And you thought it was engine trouble. The Haftorah is the vision of Ezekiel and Chazon Yeshayahu, the vision of Yeshayahu, of Isaiah. I'm sorry. And he's actually talking about the destruction. We're still in the 3 weeks. Our 3-week period has haftorahs that are terrible. But Reb Levi Yitzchak Berditchev says that there's something positive in this vision, and that is that Hashem shows us the potential. He shows us the third Beis Hamikdash, and our soul sees it, and our soul is inspired. And at some point, it trickles down, and we have that feeling and that response to what our soul saw. So what do I want to say? I want to give us a bracha that we should be able to listen to our soul. We should have the vision of where we want to be and what we want to be, and be brave enough to take steps to get us into that space. And really, 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 I am so excited to not fast on this Tisha B'Av, and I'm ready for I'm just ready for that. I'm ready for that for Bringen. And one other thing that's mamish tangential, but it really spoke to me. Yesterday, in the Tanya of the day, the Alter Rebbe has been talking in Tanya about tshuva and the steps for tshuva. And yesterday, it says in Tanya that part of the mitzvah of tshuva is believing that Hashem forgives us when we do tshuva. And to understand that we are, in fact, worthy of forgiveness. And he brings proof that in the Amidah, where we talk about Hashem who forgives, we ask Hashem for forgiveness, and we immediately make a bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem, Chanan Hamar B'Lislayach. We thank Hashem for being merciful and for forgiving. We don't make brachas lightly. That means if we're making this bracha, when we do the Amidah, we have to let it sit in our bones that Hashem really forgives us, and that we are absolutely able to be transformative, and we're worthy of forgiveness, and we are forgiven. And I want to give us a big, big bracha that all of us and our little steps towards tshuva, to becoming better people, to becoming closer to Hashem, to becoming closer to ourselves and who we're meant to be, that all of that together lights up the runway and Mashiach sees where to land. Have an awesome rest of the day.
Is Isaiah's vision